Moderating the impact track today is Jen Lynch, BVC Fund Manager for both the 2022 Growth and Impact Funds and partner at Portland Seed Fund. Jen is also a managing partner. She is a managing partner at Portland Seed Fund, an early-stage venture capital fund that invests in capital-efficient, high-growth companies in Oregon and around the Pacific Northwest. Since 2010, Jen has managed venture funds that have invested in more than 100 companies across a variety of sectors, including software, consumer products, cannabis, clean energy technology, biotechnology, biomedical devices, and more. Welcome back, Jen. I know that I got you. I know that you've been busy with BBC, but knowing you about 101 other things as well, so it's really great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
It is so great to be here, and I am so glad to be doing Impact this year. We, as you know, have 2 venture funds that get spun up every single fall in conjunction with this conference. And to the last speaker's points about democratizing ESG investment, it's really happening. This is what we're really doing in Bend. So we have local investors who come together in the summer every year, review a pipeline of companies, and bring them in to pitch and listen to what they have to say and make an investment decision. And we do it as a group, with a new group every fall. We'd love to have you. If this is something that sounds like fun, or something that you would be interested in doing next year, please get in touch. And where we start is with a giant pile of companies, and so many of them were so amazing, and it is very challenging to get to where we are today, which is the 4 companies that'll be joining us on stage. Our impact companies are looking at a combination of growth potential and profit potential alongside health of people and planet. So today we have a nice kind of cross-section of what ESG means to our group. And we have 2 clean tech companies and 2 that are focused on human health. So I am extremely pleased to introduce all 4 of these, and I hope that you will like them as much as we do. I am going to, let me see who's first. Oh, first up, okay. From Portland, Oregon, Canopii, Inc., a technology company building an autonomous greenhouse farming system to make local food production more viable. Presenting for Canopii is David Ashton. Take it away.
Hello. Hello, my name is David Ashton. I am the founder of Canopii. We are a technology company building greenhouse farms that focus on end-to-end labor automation, ease of use, crop monitoring and crop management, through data acquisition to make local and small-scale farming more viable. There's been a large need in the US for a new system. Over the last 20 years, we've lost 45 million acres of farmland due to unsustainable farming practices. In addition, we've lost 100,000 farms between 2011 and 2018. This has been driven by lack of labor availability, and we're also seeing this impact in Oregon itself as 50% increase in bankruptcies in Oregon between 2018 and 2019. There's been a lot of capital investment in this area to combat these issues. The categories are hydroponic greenhouse farms, vertical warehouse farms, container farms, in-store farms. These are all considered controlled environmental agriculture systems. Though we have a lot of investments in this area, they all have their drawbacks. Hydroponic greenhouse farms are sustainable because they use natural sunlight, but they require lots of land and upfront capital. Vertical warehouse farms are packed full of technology and are mostly automated, but they require lots of energy, and so this is very unsustainable. Container farms can be placed in the location where they provide for their communities, but they lack the production to justify the cost of automation. In addition, they require lots of electricity. And lastly, in-store farms are in the consumer and very transparent how they grow their produce, but they also require lots of energy. So what we've done is started and created the Rogue Farm. We've designed this from the ground up, and this farm is 1,200 square feet in size and produces 2 acres worth of produce. In other words, this is about 5 parking spaces of space, creating 250 plants per day. The novelty of this farm is not that it creates more production per square foot, but that it does it completely autonomously. This means no humans touch this farm for an entire month, and it produces 250 plants per day. Through a National Science Foundation grant, we were able to demonstrate this automation, and we were very excited to show this demo for the first time to the public today. So this is our prototype of our subscale. This demonstrates the automation aspects. So this is our media magazine. This is filled up once a month. with media, and then we can seed. So our seeding process, a user can say, I want 500 arugula, 200 basil, 300 leafy greens, and this will go and place those individually down to the individual seed. So after we're done seeding, it moves to a propagation conveyor in chamber where it sits for 10 days. 10 days later, it comes out. We're seeing basil here being transplanted. So here we're transplanting the basil from high density to a low density. And these are our transplanting them into these plant cups. So these are the most novel aspect of our design, in that when we're harvesting, we actually harvest the plant cup itself and not the plant. So it doesn't matter what's in that plant cup. It could be butter lettuce, it could be arugula, it could be romaine. We're harvesting cup itself, so it doesn't matter how we're doing that. So this is a very robust method for harvesting plants without using computer vision or any really complex mechanisms. So after we harvest the plant, we now separate the plant from the roots and the media. And here we expose the base of the plant, and we cut the plant from the roots and the media. So the biggest consideration of keeping a farm autonomous for a month at a time is actually cleanliness. So to keep a farm clean, we're actually cleaning the cup after every use. So this is the most heavily used aspect of the farm that we're cleaning after every single use, which allows the farm to be autonomous. And there you saw the plant being sorted into bins. So literally the only thing a user will do was tell the farmer to grow, and it sorts them into bins. And here we put the plant cup back, and we redo the cycle over and over again. So this is a more cost-effective solution because we're reducing resources, we're reducing labor costs, we're reducing energy costs, we're reducing land costs, we're reducing supply chains, and we're minimizing our startup costs. We're not only cost-effective, we're more sustainable. We have no one-time use plastics because we don't rely on distribution because they're growing at the source. We're using 95% less water because we're using a closed-loop hydroponic system. We have no herbicides or pesticides because no humans touch the plant until the consumer. We're reducing transportation because we can grow at the source of the consumer. Reducing waste because we can have continuous harvesting to forecast projections. So a grocery stores or a farmer could say, we have more basil in summer, we have more arugula in winter, and they can adjust those forecasts. We're reducing energy because we're relying on sunlight as a main source of light. And then we're saving on land because we're growing vertically. And lastly, we're promoting small business because these are designed to be in the hands of small businesses and not just large farms and large companies. So we want to be a greenhouse provider. So we want to provide our farm as a tool to the three main segments: the food service providers, retail supermarkets, and farmers. For each one of these different segments, we have a different value proposition. So for the food service provider, we have supply chain security. We've all seen the issues lately with supply chain issues. For retail supermarkets, we can provide a cheaper, more affordable source of local fresh produce. And then for farmers, we can provide increased revenues from extended growing seasons. And also we can remove the labor issues and the weather variables associated with farming. We have early traction. We just started this company last year, and we've already had letter of support from Amatera Winery in Portland, Oregon. We have early engagement with Oregon Food Bank. We also have letter of support from retail supermarkets here in Portland, a market of choice, and New Seasons. We're having early engagement with small farmers. This Lucky Crow farm is located in Independence, Oregon. So we plan to sell these farms for $500,000 each. We'll charge an installation fee, and then we'll also charge a $10,000 annual revenue to keep the farm operational and do general cleanings once a month and reloading the farm with media, nutrients, and things like that. So from a customer's perspective, they can pay off this farm in about 3 years. So the average cost of this average production of this farm will be about $200,000 per year, and it will cost about $30,000 to operate. So that $30,000 includes water, energy, seeds, nutrients, everything required to run that farm. We plan to scale quickly, and in 8 years, we plan to have 200 farms. By creating 200 farms, we'll have about $100 million in revenue. We believe we can scale quickly because we've standardized our farms. So we can mass produce these farms like cars. And so we're not designing farms per users, we're just making them as fast as we possibly can. The market here is very large. There's still 2 million small and mid-sized farmers in the United States. The commercial greenhouse market is very well established. There is, for the first time in 2019, a majority of farmers are growing at least one crop under cover. The vertical farming market is very small, but is growing extremely fast for the reasons I've pointed out. To date, we've raised $250,000 from the National Science Foundation to build our prototype. We've also submitted a National Science Foundation grant for $1 million of non-dilutive capital. We've also raised about $500,000 from Elevate Capital, Onami, Willamette Valley Capital, Ideaship, and Business Oregon. We also have submitted our non-provisional patents through Ideaship. Our team is very small, but it's very capable. We are comprised of myself and Justin and Sam, who are here with us today. And then we have a very strong support system of advisors. We won't just have these filling up space on our slides. We meet with these advisors weekly, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Well done, David. You did great.
Thank you.
I have about 47,000 questions.
Okay.
We'll just get started. How did you come up with this, and why? Is this your passion? Where did this come from for you?
I think there's been a huge need for advancements in small-scale local farming. I think that's the most sustainable way to have sustainable agriculture, so we need to promote small-scale farming, I believe, and small businesses.
So it just seemed obvious to you then, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it seemed, yeah.
What is the fail rate of the robot system? How often does some needs to manually troubleshoot? So how often is there a fail and you have to kind of get in there and fix something yourself?
Yeah, so right now we have a prototype, and the novelty of our farm is that it's not moving as fast as possible, so we don't have so many crashing. So to put a number on that, I can't put a number on that for a prototype, but because our system moves very slowly and it's not just moving as fast as possible for throughput, it actually doesn't fail as often, and it doesn't fail very often. Yeah.
Great. So what happens to the medium and the roots?
They're biodegradable. You just compost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. And can corn, soybeans, wheat, et cetera, be grown in your farms? Are the economies of scale similar to herbs?
Yes, so we cannot grow, it doesn't make economic sense to grow wheat, so like alfalfa hay and stuff like that. So we're focused on leafy greens and herbs, and we want to move into vine row produce like strawberries, peppers, and tomatoes as soon as possible.
I like this question. So the question is, are you targeting areas with year-round sunlight for consistent output? How does it function in terms of differentiation in the amount of sunlight an area gets?
Yeah, so we actually don't want to have our farm operating during the summer because that's when Salinas is producing a lot of leafy greens and herbs, and so then the farm would actually provide off-season production so they can pay for, it's designed to complement what farmers are growing. We don't want to replace what farmers are doing. We want to just complement and give them a baseline annual production.
Right, and then you're eliminating the transportation, right, which is a huge piece of the unsustainability of farming.
Yeah.
So what is the production process for the mechanical equipment of the farms, and where is it completed geographically?
So we designed everything from scratch. To make this cost effective, we had to design everything, so we're not just taking pieces of automation and stitching them together. And so because it's all custom, we're sourcing everything in Oregon, actually. So everything, we're using GK machine, which is in Donald, Oregon, which is about between Salem and Portland, and so everything we've built is with them.
That's amazing. Will non-engineers be able to repair and maintain the equipment?
Yeah, so the farm is modular, so it's designed to be, we can just pop off a piece and then put another one on, so we don't have to have skilled technicians going around fixing parts.
So just almost anybody can fix it?
Yeah.
Like even me? Well, maybe
Sure.
not. Okay, David, you know what? Can you please elaborate on early traction you have had from the bodies and companies you mentioned? Do you have any orders from them?
Yeah, so we don't have any orders. Hard to sell a $500,000 machine with a prototype, but we have letter of support from a National Science Foundation, and we have a purchase agreement. We have a verbal agreement from Amatera Winery to buy produce because we'll be selling produce for the first prototype, the first full-scale prototype, and then after that we'll be selling the farm itself.
Great, and it'll be like in the parking lot, so people will be able to see it and understand what it's doing. That's very cool.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to manufacture?
But we're projecting about $200,000 to manufacture. Yeah, and that's with their first prototype farm, so we believe we can drive that down quite a bit.
Okay. And does the system eliminate pathogen risk, i.e. E. coli, I think is what that's supposed to say?
Yeah, no humans touch the plants ever, so there's no risk.
Nobody ever touches it.
Yeah.
So there's no problems there. That's very interesting. I love the idea of connecting with Oregon Food Bank. Is the cost point realistic for nonprofit human service organizations to utilize? Is that?
This is like a new avenue, so this is something we're trying to explore on like as maybe not the primary avenue, but something that could be interesting because the Oregon Food Bank has had issues with distribution. So their central distribution is in Portland. They distribute outward, and by the time it gets to those rural communities, the food is spoiled. So by being able to grow that food in rural communities is very enticing to them. Yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting question. So soil has a host of microbiological life, trace minerals, and nutrients. How does this system change the nutrient density of the food?
So you can adjust it. So when you have soil, you're pretty much stuck with what you have in that soil, or you can add fertilizer to it, which most people do in industrial agriculture. But with hydroponics, you can adjust that nutrient solution. And so that's the reason that I think last week, the USDA approved hydroponic organic certification, so that it comes with obviously nutrients and nutrient density and freshness.
You can fine tune it.
The biggest was indicative of freshness and nutrient quality is actually once you harvest it and you consume it. So if something has the super high nutrients and you consume it for a week, that's less nutrient than someone you just eat within an hour of harvesting it.
Yeah, it's very sad to
So
leave
if you
those
get
veggies in
your
the fridge.
grant and you raise the money that you need, when can we see our first head of lettuce coming off of the full-scale Rogue Farm?
Yeah, summer next year. Yeah, we plan to have it built. Yeah.
Sometime next year.
We're already
Okay.
starting to build the full scale.
Awesome
We'll design
pitch,
it.
David. Thank you. This is exciting. So
Thank you.
keep us posted.
Okay, our second impact company pitch this morning is Ethican Pharmaceuticals, Inc. They are from Bethesda, Maryland. This is a biotech company developing high-value cannabinoid-based drug therapies using a development strategy of reformulating existing drugs, approved drugs, into safer and equally or sometimes more efficacious drugs. So welcome CEO Bruce Mackler to the stage.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank EDCO for the opportunity. Let me tell you a little bit about Ethican in the 8 minutes we have. First of all, we are a reformulator. We take approved drugs that have problems, and we reformulate them into a new delivery system, and then we use very rapid FDA, Canada, European approval pathways. And we've structured the firm to look for an early exit within the next 2 or 3 years. Now, our first lead product is called EPI-002. It has a safety problem. The target, we have reformulation target is Sativex. Sativex is a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC in 50% ethanol, and you take it 10 times a day. That's a lot, that's over a gram of ethanol a day. As a consequence, it has a lot of safety problems. Now, the other thing about MS spasticity is you have the shakes. You have uncontrollable movement. So it's very difficult to spray the Sativex into your inner cheek. What we've done is put them into a lyophilized tablet in this Zydis technology. Now, Zydis is used in 20 products worldwide. If you buy some OTC products, you'll find the little aluminum flechette or blister pack, and that's what we're doing here. So it has no ethanol, it therefore has no ethanol-induced adverse events. Now, one of our major platforms is Zydis. Zydis is from Catalent, which formulates and manufactures the product for us. The interesting thing about Zydis, it goes under the tongue, and it dissolves in 2 to 3 seconds. Therefore, it goes rapidly into the brain, where if you take cannabinoids or many other drugs and you swallow it, it goes into the stomach, and then it's into the blood, into the liver. The liver removes 30 to 45% of the cannabinoids. Children taking Epidiolex for pediatric epilepsy now have elevated liver enzymes, liver toxicity. So by using our platform, we can avoid a lot of the problems, lower doses, as well as safety issues. Now, we've already had a proof of principle in which we used our product versus Sativex in a dog pharmacokinetic model. And one of the things you can see here on the left is that the red and the purple lines are very parallel. They're almost complementary. Therefore, they have similar blood levels. Now, if you have similar blood levels, like in a generic drug, it's the presumption is that you have similar therapeutic effects. And for the approval of a new drug, we only have to show this in humans. So we've already de-risked it with the animal study. Now, this is a little complicated. For those of you who have really not seen drug development, traditional drug development, I know you've heard it takes many years and hundreds of millions of dollars, and it does. It takes 7 to 15 years, $900 to $300 million. Now, if you look on the far right side, you'll see our paradigm. Our paradigm is different, in which we use a rapid-to-market strategy, in which we can do, first of all, for our first study, we don't have to do efficacy study. All we have to do is a bioequivalence in humans showing blood levels are the same. And that's a new drug approval, and I'll show you how we're going to get to market in the next slide. Our pipeline is shown below, and that takes about 3.5 to 4.5 years. Costs about 20 to 25 million per drug. Now, here's the way we go from Canada to UK to Germany to Europe. At the same time, we go to the FDA, and we're getting our approvals in multiple places. Here is our pipeline in terms of all the indications. You can see they have very big markets. And if you look at the yellow underneath, you'll see the first 3 drugs, indications I should say, have already been shown that Sativex works in those. The far one is pediatric epilepsy, which is CBD, and children with epilepsy take this chronically. By reducing the amount they take each day, we can reduce the liver effects, and that's why we've chosen it as another reformulation. Intellectual property, we have the intellectual property of our manufacturer, which is Catalent, one of the biggest worldwide companies that did most of the covalent vaccines, COVID vaccines. We also have our own IP, and we do not infringe on our competitor. That's very important. We have a great management team. We've done it before. We've built drugs. We've sold companies. And I'm not going to go over it. It's a complicated slide, but we do have the expertise. Now, why should you invest? Why should this be an opportunity to invest? Well, investors like to get their money out rapidly. You talk about a VC is 10 years. Here we're talking about 3 to 4 years at maximum. Oops, sorry. We have a platform. We have abbreviated approval. We have very attractive valuation. That's very important. What do you get for your money? How much of the money are you going to make in return? We're about to close in our note. We only have 375,000 left. We have a lot of that soft circled. And then next year, we move into an A round where we raise about 12 million at a much higher valuation, about a 4-fold higher valuation. Now, just say I do have a nexus with Oregon. I was at the medical center for a number of years. I got my doctorate there in microbiology, immunology. I was also at the primate center. And so really enjoyed, but when you become a doctor, you have to start traveling, do your fellowships, do your postdocs. Then I became a lawyer. Got tired of fighting with deans. Here is a synopsis of what I just told you. Thank you very much.
Well done, Bruce. Fascinating, fascinating. I feel like we all just learned quite a lot from this. How did you decide on cannabis?
Very interesting. I was on the board of the first cannabis company in Canada. It was called Prairie Plant Systems, and it became Canamed. A number of my board members, we were on the board, and we sold it to Aurora for $1.1 billion. And we said, gee, we're having fun, let's do it again.
Yeah, you're very smart, Bruce, very smart. What would the drugs cost compared to the original formulas? Would insurance cover the Zydis-delivered drugs?
Yes, the Zydis is only a delivery. It's a platform. The indication is it's the ingredients which are the active. they will be regulated and reimbursed just like Sativex. Sativex is about a 6,000 to 7,000 a year drug. Epidiolex is, I believe, 40 to 70,000 a year. So pharmaceuticals can be very profitable. I hate to say that, even though you pay it, but it is the reality of life. And that's why venture capitalists invest a lot in this area.
So what would stop a company like Johnson & Johnson from developing a similar delivery method for their large pipeline of drugs?
Well, there are other similar delivery systems. However, J&J will not get into cannabinoids. No, none of the big pharma companies will get into cannabinoids because of one thing, DEA. And therefore, we've had more inquiries from European subsidiaries of American companies asking us for information. The American companies will not get into that. And under the Biden administration, I can tell you even though they're downregulating marijuana, they're not going to change the DEA platform. That will be something more likely than not that the Republicans will do.
So why the plan for early exit?
That's a very good question. We're a virtual company. We outsource everything. Our major partner is Catalent that does did the feasibility, also did the manufacturing, and now is scaling up, GMP scale up, which is very expensive, takes about 6 to 8 months. And therefore, we're a very lucrative opportunity for a number of companies who don't want to invest in people. What they want to invest is in products. And we are a product development company, and we're going to look for partners very aggressively over the next year.
And then I feel like you're going to start something else, Bruce, aren't you? Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, to your point about why venture capitalists want to invest in a company like this, the returns are definitely part of it, and the impact is a huge part of it. So many of us have a family member or friend who've been touched by MS or epilepsy, especially pediatric epilepsy, and this is a fantastic, way to promote efficacy for some stuff that we know works.
Right.
So say some more about that, right? Like the biggest risk we find in investing in a new drug is that it doesn't actually work when it gets to humans. So say more about how you're mitigating against it.
That is the key. We're not developing, and if I can go back, whoops, I can't. It takes about 4 to 5 years to develop a drug. Then you take another year or two to do safety studies in animals. We don't have to do that. We have the drug already approved. Now, what's approved, when you approve a drug, it's what they call the pharmaceutical ingredients, the API. And all we're doing is taking the same API and putting it into a new delivery system, not changing the dosage or the intended use or the dosing regimen. And let me tell you, this is what large pharma do. After they bring out a new drug, in 5 years after their exclusivity moves, all the generics come in. So the large companies reformulate. They put it in a new delivery system, they get new IP, and they block the generic companies. So we've just adopted a very standard pharmaceutical play to move very quickly. Does that answer? Thank you.
We have a question. They want to know, is this any different from medical cannabis that is like 1-to-1 THC to CBD found in our beloved cannabis shops throughout Oregon? So what makes it different?
What you're buying in your shops is impure. Potency is not known. Every company has their own purification. A pharmaceutical is regulated by good manufacturing practices. We have 100% pure material. And the difference, I didn't have time, the difference in Sativex is that Sativex is a 75% pure. That's why they need the 50% ethanol to solubilize it. And the only other thing is, I've been an FDA attorney for 26 years representing companies. FDA hates products like Sativex. They've only approved 2 botanicals in the 30 years. And so we have met with FDA actually on this. And I got an email yesterday saying they were supposed to send me the final comments and they want another 2 weeks. So we're moving down the road with highly purified. You have to be very careful when you buy things in a dispensary. You really want to look at the purity, the potency, and what it is suspended in.
I couldn't agree more, Bruce. Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful pitch.
I will
I'm
not
excited to
ask
see
you
what
the
happens.
following question.
Don't ask for
See
details,
Bruce later
Bruce.
for more advice on that stuff.
Thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are ready for our third company pitch of the morning. They are Photon Marine from Portland, Oregon. Photon Marine is designing and developing an electric outboard motor system and intelligent fleet management software for commercial boat fleets. Presenting for Photon is CEO and founder Marcelino Alvarez. I'm sure he's here.
Hold, please.
She's like, I'm going to go make double sure. While we're waiting, I'll say that Dawn from Vector Point, who you just saw in the video, and I both had the opportunity to visit both of these clean tech companies in person in Portland and watch the farm rotating in circles and slicing lettuce, which was extremely cool. It was very stuffy in there, as one would expect when you're growing a lot of lettuce. And I also got to go visit the skunk works where Photon Marine is working on this outboard motor, and they have it hooked up to the nicest Zodiac I've ever seen in my entire life. The idea being that there are these little boats that take passengers from cruise ships back to the dock when you're on a cruise, and those inflatable boats, have this one purpose, which is to go, a short distance and kind of come back. And they seem like a great first application for a motor like this. And I got to see that motor in action, and it is a very powerful one. As someone who has only driven electric cars for the last 10 years, and those of you who do know the hidden secret about why we drive electric cars is because it is incredibly fast off the line, and I expect the same out of these boat motors.
Okay, Jen, Marcelino is ready.
Let's do it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcelino Alvarez, CEO of Photon Marine. And at Photon, we're building the world's most powerful and intelligent electric outboard motor system tailored specifically to commercial boat fleets. Now, before we get started, I thought I'd share a little bit more about myself. My childhood is straight out of a Jimmy Buffett song. Son of a Cuban father, Puerto Rican mother, I was born in Dominican Republic, and I grew up in South Florida, where I spent my summers fishing and snorkeling in the Florida Keys. Back then, the idea of conservation was a pretty simple principle, one that was pretty nonpartisan at the time. The concept that you throw back the small fish today so they could grow into larger fish tomorrow, that you protect the reefs today so that they might provide for those fish tomorrow, and that you preserve the oceans today so that they might be around for future generations to enjoy tomorrow. As a father of 3 little ones right now, I'd like to believe that what we're building at Photon is just as much about scaling up those principles as it is decarbonizing large commercial fleets. Now, when we think about commercial fleets, I think it's tempting to think about this type of vessel, a large container ship wielding vessel that's traveling all around the world. And while this is an important area to decarbonize, it's not what we're focusing on. We're looking at much smaller vessels that you might see in tourism, transportation, and mariculture. These are vessels that are generally moving people and products short distances and are navigating some of the world's most fragile marine ecosystems. It is important that we decarbonize these. These vessels use their motors more than 10 to 15 times than their recreational counterparts, and they're part of the larger outboard motor market, which is expected to hit $13 billion by 2026. Makes up about 45% of that outboard motor market, and you might be tempted to ask, why not focus on the bigger slice of the pie? That's a great question. And the answer is that the recreational market is much more fragmented, motors range from 1 to 600 horsepower. Whereas on the commercial side, you tend to see a bit of a bimodal distribution, kind of clustered around 50 to 75 horsepower, and then between 150 and 300 horsepower. And so we at Photon believe that with 2, perhaps 3 outboard motors, we could address the entirety of the commercial stack. So our goal by 2026 is to reach 1.1% of that market. It's about 5,000 units or about $500 million worth of revenue. The business problem that these organizations face is pretty consistent across the board. The rising cost of marine fuel has made it extremely cost prohibitive for them to operate their businesses. Supply chains have been impacted. So when a $150 part breaks, it takes weeks, sometimes months, to be able to replace it, which is time off the water, which is lost revenue. The labor force has been reduced. So there are fewer people to maintain those vessels, fewer people to operate those vessels. And in the case of the tourism industry, numbers are still down. And so these businesses are recognizing that if they don't fundamentally change the way that they operate, they won't survive. Now, the good news is that many of these fleets are perfect use cases for electrification. These are vessels that leave from the same dock, go to the same destination, and come back to that dock. That dock has access to charging infrastructure. And they're also starting to see regulations and incentives emerge that are accelerating the transition to electric propulsion. This is different than the recreational use case, which is not going to see those types of incentives emerge anytime soon. And most importantly, these are savvy business owners. They understand the cost structure of their business down to the penny. And so when presented with the value proposition for electric, they just get it. It's an efficient system. You're getting torque right out of the gate, which means you can get your vessel from a standstill to operational mode with fewer RPM. It's an economical system that has a lower total cost of ownership and lower operating costs. It's environmentally responsible. These are vessels that are operating in the world's most fragile marine ecosystems. They get the need to transition to something that's cleaner. And it's easier to maintain. There are fewer parts to service and are less dependent on the supply chain. And so they can run these numbers pretty much in the back of their head. The cost of a gas motor is nearly $150,000 more over a 7-year period than an electric counterpart. That means that break-even occurs around 2.5 years. We have some prospective customers where the break-even is even faster than that, around 18 months. So our solution is a drop-in electric outboard motor system that can be installed in new or existing vessels without compromise on power, safety, or reliability. It comes in 2 horsepower profiles, a 100 and a 300 horsepower motor with batteries that can be sized to spec. We've recently completed our 100 horsepower motor and are now working on the 300 horsepower motor, which we intend to debut at the Miami International Boat Show in February of next year. It's the world's largest boat show. Both of our systems come with our fleet management system, PVOS, which includes industry-leading features such as intelligent energy management, predictive maintenance, and virtual technician services. Because our operators are using their vessels 1,500 to 1,800 hours per year, that means that we're going to have a much better data set to work with than our competitors. It means our software will be better. It means we can translate that into endurance and range for our customers. Now, we do have competitors, but they are by and large focused on the recreational slice of the pie. We are the only electric outboard motor company that is focused exclusively on the commercial use case. Our system contains both hardware and software and reaches the bigger slice of that commercial pie than the recreational side. Our go-to-market strategy can basically be boiled down to 3 words: land and expand. We will basically use the connections of our founding team to directly sell into customers that operate in some of these fragile marine ecosystems. Once there, we'll be able to expand into that geography, leverage the existing infrastructure, and dominate a microgeography. We're also working with boat manufacturers who sell specifically to commercial boat fleets. We're able to power their vessels, brand new vessels, and outfit them with electric motors, and then we can sell into the rest of the vessels that that customer might have as a retrofit opportunity. And then we will also have a strategic presence at the world's largest boat shows. There's a handful of boat shows that set the pace for innovation in the industry, and by dominating those, we'll be able to establish ourselves as the incumbent in this nascent industry. Our revenue model is pretty simple. We sell motors and offer a software subscription for our motors, or for our software platform. Because our systems can be designed to spec, we might see different power profiles and battery profiles to effectively reach these types of customers. Our goal is to be delivering pilots in 2023 and expand into volume manufacturing in 2024. We recently completed our P100 prototype, which you can see here operating up and down the Willamette River, and our team has secured nearly $5 million worth of signed LOIs from some of the world's top tourism, transportation, and mariculture organizations. We have nearly another $14 million worth of revenue in the pipeline. We've been able to do this because of the strength of our founding team. My background is in product design. Tara Russell, our Chief Strategy Officer, comes from the cruise industry, where she was previously Chief Impact Officer for Carnival and ran a division of Carnival called Fathom. Our CTO, Nick Sheps, comes from the electric motorcycle industry, where he built 3 Isle of Man winning motorcycles for Team Motosiz. And our VP of Business Development, Charles Steinbach, comes from a lifetime of working in fisheries nonprofits in some of the world's most fragile marine ecosystems. We're just getting started. We're raising a $6 million seed with a $2 million note to start so we can deploy capital quickly, focused on our pilots next year and expanding and preparing for manufacturing in 2024. We would love to have your support as we get up and get going on this important leg of our journey. See you in Miami.
Beautifully done, Marcelino. This is so exciting.
Thank you.
Jen, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you. That was great. So talk to me a little bit about that. You talked about how the software and data gathering over time can improve range. Range anxiety is, of course, the kind of the primary downside of owning an electric vehicle, and I assume it's the same for the boat. So talk about how it's going to compare and what you can do to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. So effectively, our solution is really tied to infrastructure, right? And because marinas already have charging infrastructure, boats have batteries that need to be charged. So for most of our customer use cases, charging overnight is going to be a good solution. For some of our customer use cases, vessels that are going out and back several times a day, having a DC fast charging option is critically important. We've got a partner that can offer that. So we're not trying to replace the the gas tank with batteries, but really just a day's worth of operation with our solution.
And this is a nice question. How accessible is the maintenance and repair of your motor to the average commercial marine mechanic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now we're using a lot of components that you actually would see in a lower unit. So same prop, same drive shafts, and so it's actually pretty accessible. As we move into sort of higher voltage systems, I think working with local communities to kind of work on workforce development, training for high voltage systems is important, but it's a system that fundamentally is going to require less maintenance. Oil change, gone. So really what you need to do is perhaps replace the coolant every few years, which is much better than every 300 hours, which is what's currently
That's
based.
great. Your target customer seems to be small business owners whom are typically cash-strapped with thin margins. What's the upfront cash need of a customer to buy your motor? Do you have a financing program?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say that our customers actually include everything from those small mom and pop operators all the way to the cruise companies that have quite a bit more disposable cash available to them. We thought we were going to need a finance option, and of our LOIs there that include some small vessels, none of them have taken us up on that option. We do think we'll need it to get to scale, but I think they can see the total cost of ownership and the cash situation, and really just it pencils out for them.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
What is the targeted life of the motor, and do you plan to address recyclability of the motors?
Yeah, recyclability is a huge thing, and so the batteries, typically 5 to 7 years is what we're looking at, and then beyond sort of their useful life as a propulsion driver, we believe could serve a valuable role as stationary microgrids. And so the motors should last past that whole 7-year period, and then you could swap out the batteries and replace it with newer technology.
Okay. Seems that legacy ICE motor manufacturers would do this as a natural extension of their products. Can you comment on their competition?
Yeah, so Yamaha and Mercury of the world, they're thinking about this, but they're able to sell $80,000, 600 horsepower motors right now, and so they're not seeing a forcing function to really drive it. They're starting to contemplate it at much lower horsepower profiles, so 25 to 50 is what we've seen so far.
And what involvement will you have in installing electric infrastructure to charge boats? What risks are there in having electrical components on docks?
Yeah,
so a little more specific. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there are already electrical components on dock, and a lot of places they're jerry-rigged, so don't fall into the water around the marina is generally a best practice. So we have a partner called Aqua Superpower that does the DC fast charging, and so we work alongside them to install high-speed charging in places that need it, and others, like I said, the 220-volt service will be enough to charge vessels overnight.
And plans in product design with lithium supply chain issues. Good question.
Yeah, having strong battery partners is important to our success. We're in active conversations with a number of tier 1 suppliers that can help us get to the scale that we need in 24.
We know that electric vehicle adoption was helped along greatly, or has been helped along greatly by the role of federal and state subsidies. Does anything like that exist from the marine industry, or do you see it coming?
So right now, the federal infrastructure bill provides for charging infrastructure. And the way that those laws are written, though they're primarily targeted at automotive, actually benefit a lot of the marine use case, because if the marina or boat ramp is within a mile of a major highway, it could qualify for that infrastructure. So that's the primary driver. The recent bill didn't include marine use cases, so we're seeing states kind of take the lead. So west coast of the US is doing pretty well in this space, as are places like Hawaii as well. So it'll be state by state for a little bit. We are working quite a bit with the National Marine Manufacturers Association on lobbying the state and congressional reps to expand that language to include marine.
Okay, and then just really quickly, what's the focus for your first few new hires?
Yes, focus is on engineering to be able to deliver on the prototypes, product management, and operations.
Awesome. Really well done, Marcelino.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, we have one more impact company for you in the next few minutes. Our final impact company is VitalFlo. They are from Portland, Oregon. They are a predictive respiratory medicine company that monitors and forecasts patient outcomes for respiratory disease. Presenting is CEO Luke Marshall.
What if I told you that to get your blood pressure taken, you had to see the cardiologist? You would look at me and say, Luke, that's ridiculous. I can go to my primary care doctor, or I can even do it at home. And I'd say, yeah, that's right. When's the last time you had your lung health checked by your primary care doctor? Spirometry is checking your blood pressure, but for your lungs. If you don't know what this test is, it's the blow into a tube and make the ping pong ball float test. And it's the primary way to diagnose folks with asthma or COPD and other chronic respiratory diseases. But right now, it's trapped in the pulmonary labs, stuck with the specialists. And as a result, they have a huge bottleneck. In the wake of COVID, there's 4 to 6 month backlogs in pulmonary labs across the country, unable to do these tests. And that makes it so asthmatics and folks with COPD can't get their regular testing. You can't do pre and post-op monitoring for surgeries, and it's a huge, huge hassle. Chronic respiratory disease in general is expensive, inefficient, and it's a growing problem. It's expensive because our current systems are reactive. It's reactive care. There's 3.2 million trips to the ER every year due to asthma and COPD alone. And we spend almost $30 billion annually on ER visits, hospital admissions, and hospital readmissions. That's after the bad thing happened. We're trying to prevent that. Respiratory care is very hard. That's why it's been stuck with the specialists. It's so hard that we underdiagnose 40% of folks with asthma and COPD. We overdiagnose another 30%. So if you're doing the math with me, that means we're correctly diagnosing with 30% of patients. 50% of folks with COPD have never had a pulmonary function test, the primary way to see how they're doing. And trends are making this worse. Following COVID, we have another 20+ million folks with chronic respiratory issues with long-haul COVID, and the triggers that cause exacerbations like asthma attacks are getting worse. I'm Luke Marshall, CEO of VitalFlo, and we founded the company to put a pulmonologist in your pocket and in the pocket of every primary care physician in the country. We unlock spirometry for primary care and their patients with one platform that works both in the clinic and at home. We're a software-first platform with a mobile app that connects to third-party hardware devices via Bluetooth, along with advanced analytics in a web app that help doctors predict how you're going to be doing tomorrow. To make spirometry easier for everybody, you need to make it fast and you need to make it easy. We provide real-time coaching in that mobile app to make sure that the data is being collected correctly, and we provide the feedback to make sure that you can fix it if there's an issue. We also use calibration-free devices, meaning that primary care docs can pick it up and use it right away without spending 20 minutes of clinical staff time getting a device ready to do a test. And they also need turnkey at-home monitoring, which I'll address a little bit later as well. We unlock this by changing spirometry from this procedure that's only in the pulmonary labs and make it easy to subscribe on a per-device basis with nice margins for us. And in the clinic, because this is a device you put in your mouth, there's also a disposable component. And we can drive revenue for in-clinic use through the disposables as well as subscriptions, and at-home use through subscriptions. The providers like this as well because they have an ROI of at least 5x per test they do in the clinic. We've sequenced our launches into 3 markets very strategically, starting with researchers. These are great early adopters, great validators of the technology. It becomes very easy to have a conversation with a doctor saying, how do I know this works? And you say, well, Duke, the CDC, the NIH, they all thought it worked. What do you think? Earlier this year, we launched into independent primary care, and that's one of our most rapidly growing segments because of how fast we can close those deals. And we've also started launching into large health systems. For academic clinical researchers, a huge growth driver for us was COVID. We helped take all of their in-person studies and convert them to at-home studies, allowing them to continue to do research even when it was challenging to get that done in the height of COVID. As I mentioned, our fastest growing segment is independent primary care, and this year we've been growing almost 3x quarter over quarter with our new subscription growth. We're projected to be in over 50 primary care offices across the country by the end of this year. And my favorite customer right now, our best referenceable customer who has helped get on calls with our prospects to help sell VitalFlo to the next health system, is Sova Health. They love the system, they love using it, they paid for the system in the first 6 weeks of use, and we're helping them tackle that 4 to 6 month backlog for spirometry. I should also mention that Sova is a member of a 90 hospital conglomerate, LifePoint Health, and we are now a pre-approved product to launch into all of those without doing a second security review, which rapidly will speed up our time to market. Next, we're expanding account values by providing turnkey at-home monitoring. Now, the nuance of this has to do with the insurance codes for why this is so important, but home monitoring that the customer doesn't have to do themselves is the #1 requested extension of our platform. That's because it has a high ROI for the customer. They still get to use the reimbursement codes to make money, but they don't have to spend the staff time to do the work. There's also a huge need because we're understaffed across the healthcare system over the country. So if you launch with them with a technology platform and don't provide the method for them to do the work, then all you're giving them is more work to do. So we can offload that with our service providers and do it for them full stack, and in the process, 3 to 5x our average account values. We're in the middle of our growth inflection, and we're projected to go from where we are now to $1 million in ARR by the middle of next year due to the expansion into health systems as well as these virtual care products. This year alone, we have more than doubled the number of spirometry tests done on platform year to date, and we're expected to be north of 26,000 tests done on platform by the end of the year. The solution was built by our award-winning team. We're a Techstars Impact alumni, and I'd really like to highlight one of our clinical advisors, Carl Motram, who literally wrote the textbook on how to do pulmonary function testing and jumped on board with us earlier this year to help make sure that we're driving value for our customers and doing everything just the right way. As I mentioned, we are in the middle of our growth inflection, so if you are interested in helping change how we do asthma and COPD care, transitioning it from reactive to proactive care, and are excited about a company that has already launched into a 90 hospital health system, has success with raising capital, including participation from Elevate Capital, has been funded through grant funds with a phase 1, phase 2 SBIR, along with a potential expansion over the next couple of weeks. We'd love to talk. And in the meantime, you can also learn a little bit more about us on our WeFunder, which launched earlier this week. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Well done, Luke. How did you get the idea for this?
So my background is in technology transfer, which I did as part of my PhD at UT Austin, and again at Northeastern for a postdoc, and really fell in love with how do you get stuff off the bench and into the world where it can actually make an impact. And when we moved, my wife and I moved to North Carolina, there was a few interesting projects going on that needed stewardship to get out of research and into the real world. And I really gravitated towards VitalFlo because we have a family history of respiratory disease. So massive market, 40 million folks with asthma and COPD. It just felt like this is something that needed to exist.
Beautiful. So who owns the patent data, or the patient data, excuse me?
Great question. Because of HIPAA, we are stewards of that data. It is the patient's data, with the one exception of if we're helping a government entity run a study. So for example, with our study with the NIH and study with the CDC, the government owns that data. In all other cases, the patient does, and we are the stewards of it.
Great. And how do you get the device into the hands of your primary market?
We've been doing direct sales, and actually it's been incredibly interesting to see how fast they can move. Earlier this year when we were first launching, we had demo to sale close times of about 2 weeks. We went to an independent primary care conference this summer and closed 6 practices at the booth, like credit card at the booth. So these independent practices are very keen on having solutions that work for them and work for their patients, and they can move very quickly. Health systems, on the other hand, are a little bit slower, but they can result in larger account values.
Sure. So this is a big question. What's your tech stack? What kind of reactions have you received from larger device companies, Medtronic, GE Healthcare, et cetera? Does your data integrate with PMR?
I will try to tackle this piece by piece. So tech stack, we have a mobile application that's in both platforms written in Flutter. Everything else is web-based and based in the browser, and that allows, in both cases, us to update our customers' spirometers remotely, which is a huge value add. I can't tell you the number of customers we've converted from their existing devices, which age out and deprecate and get harder to use over time, whereas ours is a better product month over month, year over year. For the reactions from the larger device companies, we partner with some smaller, large device companies, and they're the ones who manufacture the hardware. So they obviously are happy with us because we are their customers. For the largest, they're not focusing on direct sales the way that we are. So they have a more distributor-based model. And so for data integration, because everything is cloud-based, we built everything to be API first. So we've done a couple EMR integrations, and we have a few more on the roadmap, including to integrate with Athena Health, which is the platform that 90 hospital health system uses.
I think you're going to like this next question. So blood oxygen level is available on Apple Watch. Can you explain how your product is differentiated from the information provided by Apple?
Yeah, this is actually a great question. Pulse Ox is currently the only way to do home monitoring for respiratory disease. And it's not sufficient. It's a great early warning signal for you as the patient. For example, if you have COVID, you have an infection, and that might be information of, hey, I need to get to the ER. Like if your O2 sets 80% or so, that's a problem. But it doesn't tell your doctor anything about how to diagnose you. So if we want to know how's your asthma, like are you asthmatic, how are you doing, how's it trending over time, we need something that actually measures your lung function, and that's spirometry.
There is no app for that. Does it work for children?
Yes, the devices we integrate with are actually approved all the way down to 3 years of age. I've not met any doctor that actually thinks a 3-year-old can do effective spirometry, but technically it's available for that. We've seen the most success for folks that are at least 8 years old, but 8 years old and older works great.
Great. Okay. I think I have some funny syntax here. Do you acquisition by a strategic as your exit path? What is your timeline?
Yeah, great question. I think that we could be a potential target in the next couple of years just because of how the landscape looks. But there's a few different types of acquirers. I'll kind of just put them into buckets. We're focused first on building an attractive cash-generating business so that we always have a good secondary option. But ultimately, this is probably a company that will do better partnered with a larger entity. Those entities include hybrid primary care. So there's companies that have launched recently that are digital first with a whole network of both at-home and physical space locations. There's also a slew of large digital health companies that focus on chronic disease management that have yet to enter respiratory. Part of the reason for why they haven't done that yet, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's really hard to do this right. So being experts in respiratory is helpful. But they've not yet slotted in that next solution. And we want to win the conversation around, do we build, buy, or partner?
Luke, this is incredible. Thank you so much. Best of luck. Totally rooting for you. Well done.
And one more time, thank you to all 4 of those companies. And I want you to know that there are a number of fantastic impact companies who are also circulating in the audience today. I hope you will meet them. Before I wrap up, I wanted to say a special thank you to the BFM Fund's venture fellows who helped us with due diligence on these companies, and also some from the growth stage, and did a fantastic job getting these professionally researched and written such that our investors could make an informed decision. So thanks so much to those guys, and we will see you later.
Thanks, Jen.